All right, and with that, we will go ahead and call the meeting to order at 11:33, and we'll ask for roll call, please.
Castroville,
Here.
Rena Coast,
Here.
Monterey,
Here.
Dan City, Delray Oaks. We have a quorum.
Awesome. And then we'll ask for any additions to the agenda. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of agenda.
So move. Second.
All right, we'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? We'll bring it back to the committee. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Open it up for public comments. Anybody wish to speak on items that are not on today's agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the committee. Item number 6, consider approval of Budget Personnel Committee meeting minutes from February 7th, 2025.
Move approval. Second.
All right, bring it out to the public for any public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the committee. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 7, receive draft budget for the fiscal year 2025-2026 wastewater fund and Monterey County Water Resource Agency. And with that, I will pass it to Lawrence, I'm assuming.
Yes. Good morning, Committee Chair, Vice Chair, and member of the committee. I'm your Director of Finance, Lawrence Shiu. This is the first budget session. We have scheduled a second budget session in April. Today, I'm presenting the fiscal year 2026 wastewater fund and the Monterey County Water Resource Agency draft budget. In April, I'll present the Pure Water Monterey budget and also an overview of the entire agency budget. Let's move on to slide number 2. Okay, the agenda today includes strategic objective and goal in the proposed budget, major accomplishment for the current fiscal year, and the performance goal for the next fiscal year. I will also provide an overview of the wastewater fund and then the Monterey County Water Resource Agency budget, which include SVLP, CCIP, and SRDF. And I'll also include a project reference expenditure and also a capital project. Slide number 3. This slide shows the strategic objectives that are included in the budget. We leverage technology to improve efficiency. We anticipate changes in the industrial policy and position and adjust accordingly. We also implement innovative approach to become net neutral on water and energy. We develop leadership pipeline to ensure a talent workforce and engage the community to enhance trust and transparency. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the goals when we put together the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. We are committed to invest in agency infrastructure. This is the final year of the rate increase adopted by the Board of Directors, and staff is working on a request for proposal to select a consultant by fall 2025. We assist the low-income customer with customer assistance program. We implement best practice in cybersecurity. We also explore options to expand use of renewable energy. We continue to promote safety and maintain low incident rate. And finally, we provide leadership and communication training to the staff. Good, let's move on to slide number 5. We look at the major accomplishment in the current fiscal year. So the major accomplishment in the current fiscal year include 5.5 billion gallons of wastewater treated by the LTP in 2024. 319 acre-feet of water were injected into the seaside groundwater basin. Over 7,600 acre-feet of water were diverted from the Salina River to support the agricultural irrigation. We also replace all the network switches and upgrade the firewall and implement cybersecurity best practice. In addition, we also received the Cal OES grant of $200,000 in December 2024. Next slide, please. Now we are looking at the goals for the next fiscal year. The pure water Monterey expansion will be complete at the end of 2025, which will increase production of recycled water. The enterprise resource implementation will be complete in the next budget, and so as the SCADA upgrade as well. We will start construction of the renewable energy program at the LTP. We will complete the wastewater rate comprehensive free study and the cost allocation plan by fall this year. We will also work with outside consultants to develop investment strategies and optimize the return on the agency investment portfolio. We will continue to support the customer assistance program. Next slide, please. Now we are looking at the operating budget, which include the wastewater fund and also on the WRA budget. Okay, slide number 8 is a highlight on the wastewater fund. First of all, we look at the revenue. Total project revenue for the wastewater fund is $96 million. This includes project revenue of $83 million. I'll provide you with more detailed breakdown of the $83 million in the next slide. And we also project a VFIA financing on capital project, which is around $16 million. On the expenditure side, we project operating expenditure of $54 million. I'll provide you with more detail in the next slide. The debt service will be $2 million for the next fiscal year. Again, this is the last fiscal year that we pay for the 2012 and 2013 bond. And after that, there won't be any debt for the wastewater fund. And we also fund $200,000 for the customer assistance program. On the CIP side, the capital project carry over from the current fiscal year is projected at $17 million. Additional CIP for the next fiscal year is projected at $43 million. This is for the engineering program. And for the information service is projected at $1 million. So this will bring the CIP for the next fiscal year projection to around $44 million. I would like to point out that the operating reserve, the $54 million, this includes 5% of the operating contingency and 10% of capital contingency, totaling around $5 million. Any question on this slide before I move on?
I do have a question. In regards to the expansion, what is the overall cost that we're looking at versus the amount that we received in grant funding? Do we have that number available to us today?
No, I don't have that number available today.
Okay, if maybe we can include that in the staff presentation for the board, that would be great.
Okay.
Please.
And then, sorry.
Please,
through the
no,
chair.
please.
So on operating expenses with that footnote, are you saying that you think your best guess is our operating expenses are going to be 49 million, but you're adding in $5 million worth of padding?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So I think it's a board policy to have like a 5% operating and also a 10% capital contingency built into the budget, just in case, we have some shortfall on the capital and operating side.
All right. So, but you have a separate bullet for capital, for additional capital projects of 44 million total plus some carryover of 17. Why is the 10% in the operating expenses as opposed to already embedded in the capital projects?
The 10% is based on the capital project carryover from the last fiscal year. So it's not based on the 44 million.
Okay. But whatever that 10% is, And if you say it's based on the carryover, 10% of 17 million is 1.7 million,
Yes,
why isn't that included in the capital projects carryover as opposed to being included in the operating expenses?
I think this is how they build a budget traditional way, and we can set that as a different item in the future.
Okay.
I think we can also show the budget slightly different in the future. Is on the operating expense. We just say, okay, it's 49 million. And then we have another line below that, okay, this is the operating and capital contingency of 5 million. I think this will provide
That would
more
clarify.
clarity when we present to the board director in May. Okay, I'll do that.
Good.
Lawrence Jose, Monterey One Water Operations Manager. Is there a differentiation? Are we confusing capital outlay with capital improvement? Because capital outlay would stay in the operating expenses. Mr. Moore, that would be to cover like an unexpected pump failure that would cost over $5,000 to replace.
Yes, the capital outlay is budgeted in the operating expense. When we look at the capital project, we are looking at those major infrastructure, over 500 or 600, even over 1 million. They will become a capital project. Yes, on the operating side, there's a very small capital outlay, replacing some of the equipment. So it's slightly different than the major infrastructure improvement.
So
Thank you, Lawrence.
thanks for the clarification. And I think that would be an important clarification to either have in the PowerPoints or expressed verbally before the board, given that we have quite a few brand new board members.
Yep. Sounds
Okay,
good.
we'll do that. Slide number 9. Now we change a little bit, looking at the Monterey County Water Resource Agency budget. And there are three programs under the WRA. Is the SVRP, CSIP, and SRDF. Let's take a look at the SVRP. Total project budget is around 5.7 million. And this year, they only fund around $400,000 of CIP. And CSIP, we don't have any CIP, and the budget is 2 million. And finally, the SRDP budget is 1.6 million. This includes a funding of around $30,000 on the CIP side. So this brings the total budget of the WRA to around 9.3 million.
Question?
Please.
So just for clarity, should we be separating out the capital projects? And I'm thinking along the lines of having that separated out in the presentations so that our new board members understand that there's capital investment in SVRP, CSIP, and SRDF, particularly for capital renewal, that needs to be thought about, but that we don't fully control, we only jointly control some of that with the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. And by putting that forth in our documents, maybe that helps also remind them, hey, you need to be thinking about capital renewal or capital improvement of the system.
So when we do the presentation to the board, you will have a table separate the operating and the capital. So there will be like a 2 sessions. The first one is the operating, and below is the capital. Do you want to include the capital that we request and the capital that they approve, or do you just want to include only the capital they approve?
Probably both.
See both.
Mhm.
Okay, we can do both.
And where I'm going with this is the more we can understand their issues, and the more they can understand our issues, we
Sure, yeah,
avoid
yeah, yeah.
Transparency.
future issues.
Mhm.
Okay, so the 9.3 million is the total WRA budget, and this tie back to the county budget. Any question on the WRA budget? So I will make the changes when I do the presentation next time. So on the renewable energy side, it's around this year, the activity is very noticeably around $138,000 for the FY26 budget.
So one other,
Mhm.
sorry, one other follow-up question on this particular slide that we're seeing, which is other funds. Don't we have a separate Pure Water Monterey fund?
Yes, the Pure Water Monterey Fund will be presented in the April BPC meeting.
Oh, okay. But ultimately, it'll be part of the
Yes,
overall.
ultimately, when we present the budget in April, we will tie the entire agency together. Because we want to roll out the budget a little bit earlier than usual. So that's why
Right.
we're focusing on the WRA and the wastewater fund first.
You mean this is a complicated budget and you're still doing work on it?
Well, I think this is a very exciting budget.
Oh, only a
Right
CPA would
Exciting.
love this stuff.
Exciting opportunity to work on a very exciting budget.
Thank you.
Okay, now we look at the more detailed breakdown on the wastewater fund revenue. So as I presented before, the total wastewater revenue is 83 million. And this has already included rates increase as of July 1st, 2025. As I mentioned before, this is the final rate in the rate study, and we are working on a RFP to hire a consultant to look at the next rate study. So out of the 83 million, almost 70% or 59 million of the revenue coming from the residential rate, and the commercial is around 20%. This bringing around 16 million. And the rest, other revenue, the 8 million, this include miscellaneous revenue, like the capacity fee, like the investment interest return that make up a bulk of the remaining 8 million. Any question on the detailed breakdown of 83 million? And in addition to 83 million, we anticipate via financing of the energy-related capital project. This will bring in around 16 million of revenue to the agency. Now we move on to slide number 11, looking at the detail of the wastewater expenditure. The wastewater operating expenditure is projected at 54 million. Approximately 40% or 22 million is related to employee wages and benefit. This includes the cost of living adjustment and also increase in the benefit cost. And the operating expenditure is projected at operation just like a professional contract, and any operating supplies is projected at around 24 million. And the 24 million include the project inflation and also higher utility costs. And finally, there's a 5 million built in the operating budget to account for the 5% operating contingency and 10% capital contingency. Any question on this?
So the 24 million in operations, that does not include any staffing, or does that include the operations and maintenance staff costs?
You mean the 22 million in the staffing?
Well, I'm looking at 20, yeah, there's staffing of 22 million, but there's
Yes.
operations of 24 million. So I'm asking, what's in the orange operations? Is that chemicals,
This
electricity
include
only?
chemical, utility, any operating supplies and consultant, professional service is all
But no
including in the
staff
operating
cost.
outside staffing costs.
Okay.
Question on the expenditure. Then we look at the capital project. Slide number 12. Again, slide number 12 has show the total capital project. This include a carryover from the last year is around 17 million. And the current year CIP, the engineering department projected CIP for the next fiscal year is approximately around 43 million. I'll provide you a very detailed breakdown in the next slide. And the IT, they have a 1 million. This include the ERP implementation and then the CMMS system upgrade. So those are the IT. And then on the operating side, we have just Jose mentioned of a capital outlay roughly is around 93 million, and some of the major capital maintenance is around 2 million. Again, the capital outlay and the major capital maintenance, that 5 million, has already been included in the operating budget. But when we present the budget in the past, they want to tear that apart to show, okay, this is the agency, the total cost for the capital project. So that's why you see why there's a 5 million here. That was not included in the original slide that I present. Question on this?
You may be getting to this later, but where are we at as far as our reserve goals for both capital and operations are in regards to the board policy?
I do have some information. So on the operating reserve, the policy is at 50%, and right now we are at around roughly it's around 69 to 70 million, and the operating reserve is half of that, so we are looking at around 30 million. And the rest of the reserve is for the capital, which is roughly is around 12% is around 40 million. Again, this number will change, depends on the current year when we close the book and how much revenue that we receive, and also the expenditure, CIP, they will carry over to the next fiscal year. This is a moving target, but this is I would say, rough projection as of today.
Okay.
When we put together a proposed budget.
Yeah, it would be good to see that too in the presentation if we can.
Okay, we'll add that.
Thank you.
Okay, then we move on to a more detailed look at the CIP from the engineering department for the next fiscal year. Again, as the total CIP is 43 million. And there are two highlights I point out as is eligible for the VFIA loan financing. The first one is the 6.2 million. This is related to the renewable energy improvement. And then further down below is a 10 million. It's a electrical update that is also eligible for the VFIA loan financing. Do you want to go over each of the CIP project in detail?
I don't think so. I think we trust our engineering staff, and a little hard for us to second guess them anyway, unless they get way out of line.
Okay. Thank you for the trust. Okay, let's move on to slide number 14, looking at the debt service obligation. This is for the entire agency. Okay, first of all, we look at the 2012 and 2014 revenue bonds, and fiscal year 26, next fiscal year, is the final debt service payment. So after we pay off the 2 million, then wastewater fund, we are debt free. Okay, then we move down to the USBR. The USBR loan will be mature in 2037, and the outstanding balance is around 7.7 million. And the annual debt service payment is around 1 million. Then we look, yes.
Can we do anything about refinancing that 7.625% interest rate?
Yeah, we are looking at that as one of the investment advisory service. We are looking at refinancing some of the outstanding bond as well.
Thank you.
So Tom, I think that rate only kicks in if we move away from the ag recycling into municipal or other irrigation uses. So I don't think that's really relevant until.
Oh, that's what the 0/
Yeah,
means.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that loan as it stands is at 0%. If we ever do something else with that money, then we have to pay that higher interest rate.
When you cover this before the board, you might want to explain what the 0/ means clearly. So there'll be folks who won't know.
And
Or some of us don't remember.
where does the where does the revenue come from to pay for that bond? Right.
Yeah, water resources, it's in there.
WRA.
Yeah.
It's all
Pay-
paid by WRA. It's include in their budget, not our budget. So under WRA budget, on their side, they have 99 items to pay for the USBR debt service. So that's why you don't see any 99 item in our budget to show that, right?
Thank you.
Okay, the last one is for the pure water monitoring is a SRF loan, and this will mature in 2049, and the interest is very low. It's only 1%. The current outstanding loan balance is around 91 million, and the annual debt service payment is around 4.5 million. Now we change our discussion a little bit. Looking-
Sorry, just a suggestion on the presentation on these various loans.
Yes.
You know that there's the most common loan that directors on this board would be familiar with is a mortgage style loan, which pays interest and principal back over a fixed
Mhm.
period of time. But there are other style loans. Some of these might fall in those other categories. So it might be a good idea to clarify just a little bit, what are the terms of the loan?
Okay.
You know, the interest only, is it a balloon payment, whatever.
Okay, we add another bullet to clarify the term of the loan. Okay. Okay, then we look at the pension unfunded liability for the agency. So we have 3 tier of first. The first tier is the highest percentage, is 3% at 60, based on the single highest year. The second tier is 2% at 55, and it's based on 3-year average of the final salary. And the tier 3 is the prepper member, and the retirement formula is 2% at 62. The next column shows the unfunded actuarial liability. Tier 1 because 3% at 60, and we do have a lot of tier 1 retiree in the system. So that's why you see the UAL is very high, it's 35 million. We have around roughly it's around 20 active employee. They are still in the tier 1. The rest, they are all retiree. Again, tier 1 is a closed system. There won't be any new employee added to the tier 1. Tier 2 is for the classic employee who joined the agency. So that's like a reciprocity, but they get a lower retirement. So right now we are projecting unfunded liabilities around like $400,000. And tier 3, most of the new employee that joined the agency, they are prepper member, so they are under tier 3. So that's why you see a $900,000 unfunded liability. So the total UAL for the agency is around 36 million. And the next column shows the associate annual payment for each of the retirement tier. So the annual payment is around 3.1 million agency-wide. And there's a debt scheduled in the CalPERS actuarial report that shows when we are going to pay off all the UAL. It's pretty much is around like a 2044 or 2045. And it all depends on whether the agency, just like a mortgage, you want to pre-fund the unfunded liability. This will have significant saving in the interest over the long term. And CalPERS, they offer a 20-year amortization schedule, and the other one is a 10-year schedule. My experience dealing with them is even you pay off the loan, the UAL, and then next year you have new UAL added to your balance. So that means it's like a rolling balance. It will never end.
When I imagine that all the things that are happening with the economy right now are
Well,
impacting.
yeah, I think it's 2 years down the road when we get the actuarial report, you will see a huge unfunded liability because of the stock market.
So I have a
performance.
question, not so much for staff, but for my fellow directors about when we present this to the board, two things. Since most of the board members come from city councils, should we assume that they understand what he was just explaining to us, that this UAL fluctuates as a consequence of the CalPERS performance of their investment portfolio over time? Does that need to be said? That
I can add a bullet to specify as how the changes in the UAL will impact the unfunded liability of the agency, so I can do that. I can add a bullet or two.
okay,
I think it's good, just to, it doesn't need to be, a lot need to be said about it, but I
Right,
think
a
it's
little
good to
bit.
give perspective that, so that way folks aren't assuming that this is it,
This
locked
is
in
it,
stone,
right.
it could change.
It's not quite like
And
a
it could
loan.
be sooner, depending on how things go,
Yeah.
so.
Second question, when folks look at the 3 at 60 tier 1 versus 2 at 55 tier 2 and 2% at 62, the phrases 2% at 62, I believe, are how CalPERS describes that particular tier.
Yeah, the investment formula that they calculate when employee retire.
However, it's hard for someone to look at those three descriptions and figure out what that means. Now, you can probably guess that tier 3 is worse than tier 2 and tier 2 is worse than tier 1. But is there a way, does 2% at 55 translate into 2.6% at 60 or something like that? Does 2% at 62 translate into 1.8% at 60, or you can't even retire until age 62? I guess I'm asking, should we have a little comparative explanation that shows what percentage everybody would get if, let's say, they all retired at age 62?
Yeah, we can do it like a table, assuming that the 3 tier, they all retire. I'll do 60 rather than 62. If they all retire at 60, so what will be the retirement formula?
Okay.
We can do that.
Yeah, you don't need to change
Yeah,
the
yeah.
names that you show here, but maybe, another parentheses showing what this means at age 60 for each of these tiers.
Just FYI for tier 2% at 55. If employee, they keep on working until 63, then it won't be 2% at 55. The formula will be going up to 2.4 at 63. But for the tier 3, 2% at 62, if they work until 65, then the retirement formula at 65 will be 2.5 at 62. So that's a catch on that. So
Yeah, I'd say just pick a common age
okay, I'll
that
take
can allow
age at
a
60. Yeah.
comparison
Okay.
between the three tiers,
Okay, we'll do that.
roughly speaking. Thank you.
And then slide number 16 is our last slide, talk about the next step. So the next BPC meeting in April, I'll present the Monterey One Water and also wrap up the entire agency budget. And then our first presentation to the board of directors will be April the 28th. We'll provide a high-level overview of the budget. And then we'll have a very detailed budget workshop to dive into the detail in May, and looking for a budget adoption June the 2nd. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any question that you may have.
Lawrence, thanks for the presentation, please.
Yeah, Lawrence, could you go back to slide 5 for a moment? I just want to give you some feedback. Yeah, it's major accomplishments. Since bullet 3 talks about CSIP. But it only mentions the diversions from the Salinas River. It doesn't mention the total acre feet provided to CSIP. So I think that's a notable accomplishment. And
Okay, we'll add that. Okay.
on the last bullet, you might want to add a phrase that explains what that grant is for.
Okay, we'll do that.
And then this one you may not be able to do anything about because I think this goes back to the board. But on slide 3, I'll just point out to my fellow board members because it's probably on us. I've got a little bit of hesitancy about the phrase competitive advantage. And my logic for that is because we're not really in a competitive environment per se. We're a monopoly. That's why we're a government agency. And so I've got no problem with anticipating industry policy and new technologies. It's just the for. What are we in fact for? We're in fact for extremely reliable service to our stakeholders and ratepayers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, that phrase may be embedded in what was approved by the board for these specific strategic objectives. So it may not be something staff can change, and I may just be complaining.
Well, and I would offer too that, yes, we have a monopoly, but there's some comparables that we look at as far as other agencies throughout the state, throughout the region, that we look at what they're doing compared to what we're doing and ensure that we're in a competitive environment there. But I do hear what you're saying in regards to not being in a competitive environment.
And you're saying we shouldn't be doing wild and crazy things like getting out of line with
That's
the
right.
GM's salary. Not that I would know of any agency where that ever happened before. Yeah, I'm just, when we say competitive advantage, we're normally thinking about for-profit business environments.
Directors Moore and Williamson, if I may, this is Matt Thompson, Director of Engineering. I think I might have a little insight on that. The term competitive advantage, when we were forming this, was not related to staff compensation, although it's easy to understand why you might conclude it is. It really has more to do with us as an agency anticipating where regulatory changes are going and remaining on the leading edge so that we are doing the types of things that the grant funding agencies want agencies like us to do. So instead of being in a reactionary mode and hoping that we can get some grant funding, to kind of remain on the leading edge and be in a better position to benefit from grant funding programs, just doing things a little bit earlier than what some of our neighboring agencies might be doing.
So perhaps if I hadn't been asleep during the strategic planning session, I could have added competitive advantage while seeking grants.
You weren't asleep during that. You talked a lot.
Oh, thank you.
I just had to give it back a little bit. It was all a little love, though. Oh man. All right. Well, anything else?
Looks good so far.
It does look good.
And
Thank
thank
you
you.
for the work that's been put into this so
Thank you.
far.
And thank you for listening to our,
Thanks for all the comments. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
we're from the government. We're here to help.
All right, let's take it out for public comment. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the committee. Any last minute comments on this one? All righty. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 8, staff reports.
I don't have any staff report, but just for the board information, we are working on a RFP for the investment advisory service. We'll interview next week. Hopefully, the selection will be made by the end of March and then present to the board for approval in April.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll go to number 9, committee member comments and reports.
Thank you for your good work. Enjoy the rain. We need it.
Yeah. We do need it. And it's helping. Awesome. All right. Yes. Thank you to staff for all the work and prep for this. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody.